Welcome to Called to Homeschool with your host, Meg Thomas. I am a mother of 7 with 5 homeschool graduates. Each week, we'll talk about real-life homeschool, mindset shifts, and practical tools you can use in your home. Because homeschooling isn't just about school, it's about restoring the family. Hello, friends. Welcome back today. I am excited. We're going to be diving into another question. And just a reminder that if you have a question that you'd like me to talk about here on the podcast where I can really dive in and give you a lot more depth and help with that, you can sign up for a question. I guess it's not sign up, just fill out a form. It is either on my Instagram, Coach Meg Thomas, or it is in my weekly email newsletter, the link to put in a question in there. And so excited to be diving into this one because this is Stephanie from Pennsylvania. And she said, my husband and I decided it is best for our family to start homeschooling our 2 kids, kindergarten and first grade. No real knock on their public schools. We just believe it is what is best for us and our children in the long run. And after the holidays seems like a good time to transition. Since they are so close in age, do you think it's beneficial to do the same lessons at the same time, or is there a benefit to differentiating their instructions? Our son, kindergarten, seems to pick up on things like reading and math and sports quicker than our daughter first. So I'm not sure if we were to excel in something quicker than she would, it might deflate her a little. We do plan to keep it as informal as possible for most things, which we would do together. So this question is primarily for the actual instruction part of the day. Thanks for your time. Okay. This is going to be fun, and I'm really excited to dive into this question, and I'm actually going to go in a really roundabout way to talk about some things I want to talk about with this question, because you're like, this is a simple answer. And yes, but I want to dive in, and that's what we get to do here on this podcast, because I think that's a great question just about lumping kids together, or people who are going to be homeschooling later, or like wherever you are, maybe even if you have kids lumped together, twins or something like that. But I'm actually going to go a completely different direction. And don't worry, I will answer that question. But I want to talk about something different with this, because the question is regarding a kindergartner and a first grader and their education. And so I want to look at that. And in the public school realm, they are pushing academics younger, and younger. I don't know about you, but when I was in kindergarten, and even when my oldest was kindergarten, it was half a day. And now most kindergarten has become a full day. And before, where there was more playtime and more time to just be a kid, it has become more rigorous and more academically driven. And if they were creating amazing results, then it was like, well, maybe that works, but they're not. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, as of 2024, only 35% of U.S. high school seniors are proficient in reading. Friends, that is a ridiculously low number. So here we have all these kids we got to just push them harder. We got to do all these things because kids aren't reading very well, but we're pushing kids, and 35% is such a crazy low number for kids, and they're graduating. This is not like dropouts. This is the kids who are graduating. Only 35% are proficient in reading. So pushing children young in academics does not work, and a lot of times it will often backfire. So I want us to come back to letting kids be kids. And today I want to talk about the first 3 phases in the Thomas Jefferson Education. And you may be saying Meg, this is kind of a random tangent, but trust me, as I was thinking about this with this kindergarten and first grader, I actually want to challenge Stephanie and anybody else listening to have a completely different mindset shift. So we're not thinking, okay, curriculum, am I putting together? Am I having them apart? I want you to actually think about what they actually need before we're even getting to the curriculum question. So the first 3 phases of the Thomas Jefferson Education are core phase, love of learning phase, and scholar phase. So before anybody panics, oh, Meg, I have to adopt a whole new method and all new things. No. This is more about understanding timing, because here's what I see over and over again. Moms are trying to create young scholars. It feels amazing. It feels really, really impressive when your kids know fancy things and people are like, oh, wow, they're homeschooled. They're so intelligent, right? It feels good, but we're focusing on the wrong things. And so a lot of times we're trying to create the scholar when actually we have a child who is still in the core phase. I have talked with so many people over the years, obviously just Joe Blow off the street that homeschools, wants to chit chat or something with me. I have this really bright 3-year-old and I really want to push them. And it's no, you're focusing on the wrong thing. You're going to burn them out. So This is why I want to focus on this, just this little bit of a mindset shift of when children are entering in these ages of maybe looking at some of these phases and thinking, do I have these foundations set up before I really am pushing academics and trying to create a scholar before they are ready? So we're going to go through each of these 3 phases. Obviously, there are more phases, but I'm just going to focus on these first 3. So core phase is birth to around 8 years old. And one of the things I love is that, just even that statement, is around 8 years old. Because you may have an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old who is ready for the next phase, and you may have a 9-year-old who's not ready for the next phase. So instead of having these made up timelines, right, of like at 7 they do this, at 8 they do this, at 10 they do this, whatever it is, get off of that timeline and go for what they're actually able to comprehend and what they're actually able to do. So I love that, just around. So this would be the age that Stephanie's kids would be in. This stage is about character, and this is where children are learning right from wrong. Obedience. That is one of Charlotte Mason's first things that she talks about she wants kids to learn is obedience. And not blind obedience, not little soldiers, but how to be obedient to, like, we listen to mom. And that's going to make homeschool so much easier in the future, or keeping your house clean, doing chores, cooking, all of those things are going to be easier when we have learned obedience in those first young years of our life. Work ethic, responsibility, self-control. What's our family culture? It is foundation building. And there are kids who are older. We've got teenagers out there, right, who don't have a good work ethic, who don't know how to be responsible, who have no self-control, right? Because we get so caught up in this academics that we're just bypassing all these really, really important things. And so instead, slowing down and making sure your kids know some of these skills before you just jump into the next phase. So this is a phase where, and something out later is, you cannot out-curriculum a character problem. So there is not this magic curriculum that's going to help your kid later in life just learn work ethic or responsibility or obedience. And so this is why you really want to focus on these character things. If your 6-year-old won't respond when you speak, or melts down at small requests, can't sit for 10 minutes, resists every instruction, the answer is not a better phonics program. The answer is the core phase work. And friends, this is where happy habits lives, are these core phases of learning these very, very basic skills of listening, of not having the meltdown, those types of things, being able to sit for 10 minutes, right? Like all of these things, you can put them right into your happy habits, and you can download that on my website at Coach Meg Thomas. But this is where family rhythms really start to matter, and they are created. You have to be intentional with the family culture that you want to create and what that looks like. And a lot of times it can be created in this young stage. Now, it can be created older too. So if you just have older kids, please don't think like, well, I'm out of luck, Meg, like my kids are older. You can totally do it older as well. My big kids were older when we were really intentional of trying to create what was the family culture we want, and it worked. But it was real nice when those young ones came along of like, this is just what the Thomas family does, and they were born into that culture, and it made it really easy. So if you do have young kids, this is such a great time to be really intentional with like, this is the family culture we want to create. So the core phase says, before academics matter, character matters. Before multiplication tables matter, respect matters. Before spelling lists matter, self-control matters. And when you get the core phrase right, love of learning becomes easy. And this is why I'm always trying to preach things about doing all this foundational work, because we want homeschool to be easy. And if your kid doesn't listen to you, is not obedient, has no self-control, right, has a meltdown over the simplest thing, homeschool's not very fun and it's hard. And we always want it to be easier. So even if your kid is older, it's like, well, hey, let's come back and learn some of these basic phases of the core phase. So the next phase then is around 8 to 12 years old. And this is where my youngest is he is 8 years old. And so he is in this phase, and it is called the love of learning phase. And friends, this is my favorite phase. I have things I love about all the phases, but for homeschool 8 to 12 is probably my favorite phase because they are just excited about everything. Now, if you fired hose them when they were little, you may need to slow down a little bit. But if you've been able to just go nice and slow at their speed, this phase is absolutely one of my favorites. So this is where children, you're helping them to fall in love with ideas, not grind them through them. This phase is curiosity exploration, read alouds, field trips, projects, rabbit trails. This is where you increase wonder, not pressure. And here's where I see moms panic, but my 9-year-old doesn't love reading. My 10-year-old won't write an essay. My 11-year-old hates math drills. And my first question is, are you still trying to create a scholar, or are you nurturing love? Love of learning phase is about exposure. It is about letting them see how big and beautiful the world is. It's not about making them perform like a 16-year-old or even an adult. When a child resists heavy academics at 9 or 10, it does not mean they are behind, because remember, behind isn't real. It might mean they are exactly where they are supposed to be. If your 10-year-old loves listening to stories, building things, learning random facts, asking big questions, that is love of learning. Do not squash that by increasing pressure. Increase wonder, read more, explore more, talk more. This is where you are lighting sparks, and sparks turn into scholars later. And this is so fun. And a lot of this phase, I find that we just go off on tangents, right? That we were just earlier today when we were doing school, we were looking at, we love maps. And so we were looking at our big map, and we were overlooking in, I guess it would be East Asia area, Philippines, and all over that area. So we're finding all these things. And we had read a book about Krakatoa, about the big volcano that exploded. And then we were trying to find where that was. And then we were trying to find different islands. And that led to all these amazing questions. And then why is on our map, it has the higher the mountains are, it becomes brown. So why in southern China is it so brown? And then we go off on this tangent about the Himalayas and Mount Everest and so many different fun things. I just love this phase. And so this is not about just ramming so much knowledge down their throat and can you pass this thing? But we are just igniting this love of learning. And it can be the funnest phase when you look at it this way. And this is what I see when homeschoolers come at it, even if it's I don't even know if I would consider myself a Thomas Jefferson education, but I love these ideas of phases of what I see when people have this idea of going slow, going at their kids' rate, helping them love learning, those types of things, is that it doesn't look impressive when they're little. Right? Because it's like, wow, there's the neighbor next door who's 8 is writing essays and your 8-year-old can write a sentence, right? And so there's some comparison or like, oh, I kind of feel embarrassed. Their cousins are doing harder stuff than what my kid is doing. But what I found almost every single time is that when you have a kid and you allow them go through these phases, doesn't look impressive until all of a sudden you hit the scholar phase and they just explode and come alive. And that's the phase we'll talk about next. And public schoolers, you'll see or just any charter school, whatever, academically, they look really impressive young, right? Because they have been drilled. These are the sentence structures. This is multiplication. This is division, all of these things, but they never built a love of learning. And so as they start hitting the scholar phase, 12 plus, their love for learning starts to decline, which would make sense why in the nation, we have only 35% of kids proficient in reading because they don't love it. And homeschoolers, a lot of times you're seeing that number is 99%, or just really high when you allow them to go at their own speed and their own pace and discover things and just getting really excited about them. And so I like to draw that for people. So I always have this little crisscrossy map of it looks government schools look kind of impressive in the beginning, but then they start to tank. Homeschoolers don't look super impressive in the beginning because they're working on these core foundations, their fundamentals, how to do basic skills, but then they hit the scholar phase and they go up. And that's when you see a lot of my kids start college pretty young, but we've gone slow and then they're ready for it. They're ready for a challenge, which brings us into the third phase I wanted to talk about today is scholar phase. And once again, usually 12 plus, and not by force. So this is also a fun phase. And I think I like the 8 to 12 the best because I still get to do it with them. And I really love that. And on the scholar phase, that's when my kids really become more independent of what can I do by myself? What can I create? And so they're kind of jumping off mom's still there to help me if I need it. Dad's still there to help me if I need it. But what can I do? And so I love to see the independence, but there's something fun about having your little 8-year-old snuggle with you and get so excited about the books you're reading or looking up something together. And so that's probably why it's my favorite. But this is really fun to start seeing them take ownership of their life and really start creating amazing things and pushing themselves. So in the scholar phase, this is when a child chooses more seriousness. They can sustain focus. They can handle feedback. They can take correction without melting. They can sit with hard ideas. discipline themselves. This is so awesome, right? Because I know some adults that can't do these things. So you're really teaching your kids some amazing life skills as well by doing it this way. The scholar phase cannot be dragged out of a child. It has to be awakened. So you cannot just push, and just like hope that they get into it. You are lighting this fire in them of learning is so fun and we're creating this amazing thing. And part of that comes from mom's own love of learning. And so really that's part of well-educated heart philosophy, right? Is opening up mom's heart and getting her really excited, because it's hard not to love something when the person teaching you thinks it's the coolest thing ever, right? And so this scholar phase is really fun, but you can't force it. You can't push it out of your child, awaken it from them. And when a child is ready for a scholar phase, you're going to see it. They want depth. They want to master something. They care about it, doing it well. And it's been interesting with all of my kids when they get to this phase, and some of them have hit it younger and some of them they've been older, right? Figuring it out of like, what do I love? And some of them it was music. Some of them it was writing. Some of them it was maybe speeches, or just so many different things of like, this is what I love. And maybe it is physical, so sports or something like, I love this and I want to know about the body and I want to understand physics because it makes me a better athlete or whatever it is. But they want to know more and they want to have this depth. And I've seen this with all my kids, is like they find their thing and they just really push themselves and do more than I would even ask of them, because they're finally so ready for it. So this is when classic literature lands deeply. Essay writing becomes meaningful. And just so you know, not all kids are going to love classic literature. Some of them are going to love it. Some are going to be like, meh, but maybe they'll understand it. And it's been fun. My 14-year-old and I are reading the Odyssey, and we actually read it by ourselves. He did not like reading it together. So we read it by ourselves, and that's been fun for me as well. But then coming to with him with meaningful questions and getting him just thinking and talking about it, was like all of a sudden it's coming alive to him, and it's so much more interesting than just read it, tell me about it, and move on, right? And essay writing, some of my kids love writing essays and some of them don't. But for me, it's just that not even essay writing, but it's like just need to share what they have, and they're going to use their own format to do that. So maybe it's essay writing, maybe it's a song, maybe it is a book, something, right? But when you have so much joy and excitement, you will find a way to express it, creating a video, creating whatever it is. But to me, like literature and essay stuffs are just about creating. And so to me, it is just opening up the doors for them creating. Things start to make sense to them. But if you try to force this at age 9, you're going to get resistance. And then you might assume like, oh, my kid is so lazy. They're so unmotivated or so behind. No, you just might be too early, and timing matters. So one of the biggest mistakes I see is the phase confusion. Trying to fix core problems with curriculum. And I always say like curriculum cannot fix a relationship, cannot fix these types of things, right? You fix those things and then curriculum just gets to be fun and awesome. Fixing love of learning problems with rigor, right? Pushing through and pushing scholar expectations too soon. And then homeschool becomes a battle. And here's the beautiful part. When you align with each phase, things feel lighter. Not easier in the lazy sense, but smoother, because you're working with development, not against it. So once again, Meg, you might be saying, Meg, you really didn't answer Stephanie's question. And you're right, because I really wanted to make sure that you understood that maybe curriculum isn't where you want to start. And maybe it is, but you may want to think it like, do my kids know right from wrong? Are my kids obedient? Because it's going to make homeschool so much more fun and so much easier when you have those school skills down. Now, however, I did not want to leave you completely empty without answering this question. But so can you lump your kids together in what they're learning? Sure. If that works for them. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. I have always lumped together group subjects like science, art, and history, because was really easy to do it together as a group. And if I had somebody who was really into it, I could go longer with them, and the other little ones could just float away, right? Because there was no like, oh, I understand this history, and another kid like, well, and I'm an idiot because I don't understand who Marco Polo is, right? They were a little bit more they're hands-on, so I could just do it across the ages. So I've never had an issue with group subjects like that. And little kids, I just let them come and glean what they can glean. And then when they're done, they just kind of filter out. And big kids, I usually would teach towards the oldest one. And a lot of people just glean a lot from that. And that's really worked for us. Now, as far as different subjects like math, reading, I have found it works best to do that individually. And I did try in the very beginning because my first 3 kids are just 1 year apart each, of trying to do it together because I'm like, I can just do 1 lesson instead of 3 different lessons. And I did try that for a year or 2 until I realized that doesn't work. I need to individualize their education. And it's been interesting. Some of my kids, a younger kid has been better at math than a big kid, or somebody got reading quicker than somebody else. And so my family, even though I'm a competitive person, we made sure it wasn't about a competition. It was just, oh, that's so cool. You really understand math. What a neat talent you have. Oh my gosh, you've worked really hard on that. Instead of like, oh, I'm sorry, don't make your sister feel bad. But it's like, well, no, you have different talents and strengths. Like, we're not comparing your art to this kid's math. We just have different things. We're all at different levels. And so it was really easy for me to allow younger kids to just surpass big kids because we were all on our own different timeline. There's no grades, right? Nobody's name's up on a board with me putting stars on it saying, you're the smart one, you're the dumb one, right? We didn't have that. We didn't have grades. We didn't have anything. And so certain kids could pass other kids in different levels. And I was like, that's so cool. What a neat gift you have. You work really hard. Well, those are really great talents you have. And here are your great talents. So it wasn't one kid thinking they were better than somebody else and not another kid beating themselves up. But like I was talking about with those phases, the core phases, some of those skills of learning to be happy for other people, right? And really helps us to not compare and do some of those things. So I hope that this episode has helped you reflect about your own kids and maybe slowing down just a little bit and focusing on these phases. And as for Stephanie or anyone else pulling your kids out of school, slow down and learn first how to be a family. Include them with what you're doing, have some adventures, go to the parks and museum, and once you've detoxed them from school, you can really start to build something beautiful. Thanks, friends, and I will talk to you next week. Thanks so much for listening to Call to Homeschool. If today's episode was helpful, the best way you can support the show is by leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more homeschool moms find this work, and I appreciate it so much.